Okay, welcome everyone to the December 3rd, 2020 COVID-19 Response Roundtable series. And I know that you have 1,000 things going on, and taking your time out of this day to share with other CTE stakeholders across the state is very important. So everyone that is participating, we really appreciate this. It's going to be a big group today. We had 121 registered, and we have 70 or so on here now, and they'll be coming in and out. So thank you for being here and taking this time out of your day, and we appreciate it. You see there, Commissioner Gordon's telling Chief O'Hara, well, it's time for another roundtable, and it's really important because he's using his red Batman phone. And of course, Batman weighs in. He says these roundtables help solve problems and fight arch villains. And it's not just Batman alone fighting, it's all you guys fighting together. And Robin says, Jeepers, you're right, Batman. Robin's a good yes man to have around. He makes Batman feel good about his decisions. And of course, the villains, they added COVID-19 to them, and they're talking about how these pesky roundtables are foiling their schemes of evil they have going on. So I hope that Batman inspires you to really provide some good information today. And of course, we'll put the POW on COVID-19 for CTE. And as always, if this is your first time on here or you haven't been on for a while, remember that all of the support and guidance provided by TEA is on the COVID-19 support and guidance page, and just a simple COVID-19 TEA Google will get you there, and you can find all the different documents related to support and guidance. There's two major support and guidance documents that you usually see. One is health, and the other is in attendance and enrollment. The latest attendance and enrollment document is November 19th, 2020. Our last meeting was on November 5th. So I thought I would hit just a couple of highlights. One thing that was new as of November 19th was this question and answer. It says, at the conclusion of the back to school transition period, is my LEA required to allow students back on campus who wish to begin in-person instruction, or can you wait till the beginning of the next grading period? Well, as always, they err on the side of the student being in person. And so really what this is saying is if your transition back to school, unless that student has made the choice to be on remote, then you have to allow that student back on campus. However, if the student had made the choice, then at the beginning of the next grading period, remote students would have the option to change their instructional delivery method to on-campus instruction. But if it wasn't the student's choice, then you have to allow them back as soon as possible, or as soon as you open up to on-campus face-to-face instruction. The next update provided by the attendance and enrollment was if a campus experiences a number of confirmed COVID-19 cases that impact a number of instructional staff, and we were talking about how it really impacts, and subs are really one of the biggest challenges we face during the COVID-19 crisis. Can the LEA restrict on-campus access to the specific campus? And this to me just is a clarifying. And so for campuses that are already open to on-campus instruction, the LEA may restrict student access to on-campus instruction and instead offer those families remote instruction for up to 14 calendar days. And so you basically get 14 calendar days to get that under wraps and to get sufficiently staffed for instruction when making appropriate operational adjustments. The last update that was on the attendance and enrollment PDF, what happens if an LEA provides remote instruction that does not comply to the guidelines? Well, at a minimum, the LEAs that do not apply to the guidelines or the requirements of the attendance and enrollment documents may be entitled to claim half the operational minutes they would normally claim on each instructional day. So not adhering to these guidelines really impacts funding and impacts attendance. Even it says that this could require LEAs to add additional minutes to the calendar in order to bring them into compliance. So if you thought you met 1,000 minutes and you weren't in compliance with the attendance enrollment documents, then you're really only getting credit for 500. So make sure that you're doing your part to adhere to guidelines set forth by TEA. And it says LEA should be tracking changes to the daily offering of on-campus, as this information will be reported will impact the LEA's funding, the local education or the districts. And then the public health and guiding, the public health plan and guidance document was, the latest one was November 5th, 2020. And of course we met on November 5th and there weren't really any new updates to the public health planning guidance. Again, we encourage you to be the expert in your district. Make sure that you visit this site at least once a week, check for updates, and Google search those CTE excerpts that are in there. But be the expert in your district. Don't rely on someone from another curriculum area to explain this to you, because CTE is so different, it may not be the same. In other updates, this came in from the TEA listserv, and TEA looking for industry-based certification submissions, looking for new ones, and you can see that TEA held a series of meetings from the IBC Advisory Committee, and the purpose of it was to assess options relating to the next IBC evaluation process, given the impact of the COVID crisis and the next steps. The Advisory Committee is foregoing the 2020 update because of the pandemic disruptions to the workforce boards and TEA employer partnerships. The committee recommended using this year and next year, 2020, 2021, to make improvements to the process to be released in 2022. So any changes made to industry-based certifications will not occur until 2022. The TEA will be accepting submissions on the recommended IBC list for inclusion from December 1, 2020 to January 15th, 2021. So if you have a certification that you want on there, it's a very short window. And this link, this Qualtrics link is only going to be live during that time. And so if you have a certification that you think would meet the qualifications to get on the list, now is the time to submit it. Additionally, I think that this was really an update that was provided back in August, but revisions, revised versions of the programs of study frameworks on TEA are now posted on the TEA program of study website. And of course, I think all of you have that link. These revisions were prompted by an evaluation of the auto coding system through PEAMS, and to make sure that the programs of study courses are matching what's in PEAMS, those updates were made. And then also, many of you probably got the email yesterday or today that the bump money or the reallocations for Perkins 5, 2020-2021 is out. And there's really nothing you need to do other than you can go onto the entitlements page and see how much you're getting. No action is required because TEA will just initiate the adjustments and put it in your largest class object code. And for most of you, that's going to be 6,300, your 6,300 category for just general supplies and equipment under $5,000. Once allocated, you will receive a NOGA, and when you get that NOGA, of course, you guys all know, send that over to your business office and get your local budget updated. For those of you that do not get the listserv, if you'll go to the TEA agency update page, you can type in your email address, and then after you hit this, there'll be a whole series up, and you can subscribe to the CEA, the CTE update, or accountability, or whatever you want to. I always recommend that you sign up for the CTE and to the administrator address, the superintendents. So make sure you get on there and that you're receiving these TEA updates through the listserv. As far as CTAT programming, of course, we have the Next Gen administrators that meet the third Thursday of every month, along with the CTE New Teacher Academy that meets that afternoon at 4:30. The COVID roundtables, which we're in a part right now, we have held instructor roundtables, and we'll probably begin another round of those in January. The Midwinter Conference is coming up, and also we're available to do district program evaluations in your schools. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure that you go to the CTAT YouTube channel and subscribe. Recordings of all our presentations, such as this one, are posted on the CTAT YouTube channel. So make sure you go on there, hit that bell, and hit the subscribe button so you're notified when a new video is posted. Also, many of you in here, in this room, in our roundtable here, you guys are really the best experts in the state as far as CTE information. And we're asking that you go to the ctatwinter.com/presenters and submit a presentation. And the presentation deadline has passed. It was on November 6th. But I checked with Robin before we started this, and she said that we will still accept presentations through the end of the week. And I know, Marley, if you're on here, thank you for submitting one. Marley had a great one that he submitted today. And I know if any of you, if you have time and you're able to present, make sure that you get on there and you share a presentation. They're all video recorded and then dropped in a Dropbox. It takes about 30 or 40 minutes to do, so nothing big. So anyway, get on there and be a presenter for CTAT if you don't mind. And finally, there's Batman talking to my favorite arch villain, Shame, because that Shame was one of my favorite movies when I was little. And so I didn't catch this till I was older, but Shame is kind of a playoff on Shame. And so Batman is telling Shame there, your corona spreading crime days are numbered. Good job, Batman. And so now I'm going to exit back into the gallery mode. And we can get the roundtable underway. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. I do have a question that I would like to start with. Oh, Allison, thank you for presenting. Good deal. Mr. Ayers has asked that if anyone has any resources for blind students, and Mr. Ayers, do you mind hopping on and telling exactly what you were looking for?
Certainly. I've already checked with Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. She sent me some great resources. But I was just seeing what other resources were out there. I know the state has some amazing resources, but I've got a middle school student that's going to be an upcoming high school student, and they were kind of curious, you know, some of the career areas that would be best suited for them. And then I started thinking about it, you know, some of our heavier areas like welding may not be exactly conducive for a blind student, but, you know, what kind of resources anybody would have that I could help give the parents of this student to help them make a decision in whichever direction they wish to go.
And Mr. Ayers, if you would like to, if you have some resources to share with Mr. Ayers, you can drop those in the chat box. Or Mr. Ayers, if you want, if you don't want to, you don't have to. But if you want to put your email in there, then people certainly can grab that and shoot you an email. Lisa, do you know that site that used to be CTE for special populations? I think it ran out of Texas A&M. Does that still exist?
They're on the TEA website. There's special populations connections, and but after they changed
to Encore
and moved everything into Encourse, I believe it may be, or no, it's not Encourse. Let me pull it up and I'll drop the link in for that area. But then they used to have each of those individual colleges kind of took a pathway, and then that all got pulled back in-house, and it's not done that way anymore.
Right, and that was like Stephen F. Austin used to have some, and UNT had the trades and industrial. They all got pulled to that on-course website. Who else has a topic? Anyone shut down? Allison's telling you, Mr. Ayers, that they use that JAWS like you were saying earlier before we got started.
Mark, I have a question. It's Renee from Comal.
How are you, Miss Martinez?
I'm great, thank you. We are trying to brainstorm on some possibilities for our clinical rotation students in the spring. I think we thought a couple of months ago that the spring was going to be better, but it doesn't appear that that's going to happen. So I'm just curious what other types of options or what other types of plans you guys have for your clinical rotation students. We don't have a big lab area in any of our high schools that mimics you know, a hospital room or a doctor's medical office. So I'm just curious if there's anybody out there that has any ideas or has any plans on what they might do.
That's a great question. Who's doing something innovative as far as clinical rotations?
We're all in the same boat.
I know there's some good stuff happening out there.
Well, the closest I've got is my health science teacher reached out to Medical City Frisco, and they're doing a weekly Zoom with their hospital coordinator, who's pulling in different doctors and nurses and actually working with the students. And that's every week, once like on a Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, we've got that going with one of our hospitals here in town. I'm just like, oh my gosh, 5 days of things, and what are we going to do? And that's definitely not my, health science is not my strong suit yet. So anyway, thank you.
Mr. McClure typed in the chat box that they're having a ton of guest speakers.
Yeah.
Is anyone using their school nurses, or it seems like that would be an easy fit because a student is a student in some ways.
Yeah, that's an idea. Tina and I talked about that this morning. She thought that would be a great idea. So we're in talks about that as well.
We've done that here in Humble ISD, and it works with our elementaries. Our middle schools aren't as eager, but we've done it with our elementaries, and it's been successful. It's limited because you have so many kids that want to go on that rotation, but it at least gives them something.
Are y'all letting them go to the elementaries this year?
Yes.
Do that? Oh, wow. Okay.
How did you get buy-in on that, Larkin, where like our campuses are currently not allowing any outside visitors, and they're considering high school students coming down to work with elementary as a visitor, and with COVID and exposure and potential whatever, we have not been able to make a move on that. Did you just not have any resistance, or did you do some real good finesse, apply some finesse?
Well, I think in general, our district's attitude is if we can make it work in-house, we're going to do anything we can in-house. So I think the first step is that's just kind of the general feel and attitude right now. But then our coordinator over it went directly to the lady in charge of all of our medical services for, all of the nurses and all of that for the district. And they just kind of sat down and talked through all of the issues, and it's not perfect, and we don't have a lot of kids going through it yet, but it's at least something.
We did the same thing.
I don't have a great answer for you there. I apologize, but yeah.
We did the same thing at WFISD. We just, we asked, but we already had students, so we kind of begged for educational students still to go to elementaries and junior highs. We asked for our mental health students to still and be mentors at the elementaries, which they desperately need. So we even paired our online high school kids with our online elementary kids, and they have just a proctor who's sitting and listening, making sure there's nothing inappropriate said or done. And so it was kind of an easy transition. If you'll let those kids come, why would we not let our kids shadow the nurses? And so because we have 26 campuses, I can spread them out a little bit more. They're not getting what they need completely, but at least it's something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. What if you have the education and training precedent already set. It's really easy to piggyback on that.
Yeah, we're not letting our Ready Set Teach or our FACS kids go to our elementary or middle schools this year. So it's kind of like, well,
Yeah.
so
we've had to be, our education and training kids are going. We've had to be selective on what elementary schools they go to. Some of our higher incidence middle elementary schools, they're not going to, but the schools with low incidence is where they're going. So our high school is actually our lowest incidence center in our district. And then for the CNA, we're fortunate because we have a lab right next to the classroom that they're able to go into and get all their skills.
Yeah. Okay.
We're doing something similar with our Ready Set Teach. I think somebody mentioned the online. Our kids are actually, we're having them log into, we're still doing hybrid learning, so we're having them log into the teachers' classrooms as they're doing hybrid, kind of as a student for observation.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
For your education and training programs, you may want to reach out to the local colleges who are looking to recruit your students to become their future students, and see if their students who are sometimes now having trouble with going to their work sites for internships and stuff, they might want to be demonstrating teaching skills and so forth into the classroom, so they get an additional teacher almost for free.
That's a great point. And a lot of times the community colleges now have started these pre-education and training programs where, and I'll get the courses wrong, but they offer EDUC 1204 and EDUC 1103, and they can get 6 to 7 hours of dual credit sometimes through the education and training programs. And so, to Lisa's point, if they're looking to recruit your students into those programs and you have a local community college, then you might want to partner with them to see what they're doing for a practical experience.
And it could even be at like their master's level teachers or their programs who are doing their leadership. They could practice doing their T-tests on your student interns when they could record a lesson, because right now the struggle is trying to figure out how do you apply T-tests to a virtual environment, and they're kind of working through that. They could test that out on your students doing practice lessons.
Is anybody else having trouble with their instructional practices and education practicum students? I want everyone to notice that I made myself not say Ready, Set, Teach, so they can get you of that.
In Clear Creek are kind of in the same boat. We have a very robust, we call it teacher education training, but the practicum, and a lot of students enrolled in it. And unfortunately, our elementary schools are just straight up not allowing the visitors, the students, to come in person. So we're just trying to get them involved as much as we can online for now.
There's a lot of good information coming into the chat box, and I will copy the chat and we'll send that out with a link to the video too. So if you're missing that, we can copy and send that chat box information to you. Awesome. Anyone else? Well, what kind of co-op trouble have most of the schools? Is the economy open up back enough that we're able to send most of our work-based learning kids out that are working in paid jobs? Who's still having issues with that? Anyone? I guess that's good. What about? Go ahead, Ms. Irvin.
Gonzalez. We haven't had we've been back face to face since the 4th or 5th week of school. We actually took an extra week at Thanksgiving due to cases and stuff, but we're going back again on Monday. I do the career prep and CTE, and I will be real honest, we haven't had a whole lot of issues with our career prep kids. One of the biggest issues that we've run across, and it's something that we didn't put into place beforehand, is if we quarantine kids, not because they're positive, but because of exposure, their workplace doesn't necessarily want them to quarantine. They will have different standards in place. And that has been a big issue that we have dealt with, especially in where we are being rural. These kids, some of them depend on their jobs for food and rent and stuff. But that's been a big thing, is if we quarantine a kid due to possible exposure, their work is not necessarily wanting them to quarantine. So that has been something we've dealt with over here.
Wow, I would have never thought that.
Never did I think about it until it happened with one of my kiddos. He traveled to Mexico, so we quarantined him. But work required him to come back to work. And then teachers got upset because he was at work, but not at school. That was a mess.
Yeah. And I bet that's happening more than we realize, because especially if they're, we have some students who are coming onto campus for certain on-course campus requirements, and then they get quarantined for that, but they're still working. And then the teachers don't find out until they turn in their timesheets every 2 weeks or every month or whatever it is. So, yeah.
It's just been one of those things where we just kind of haven't, I always touch base with my employers to find out, what are your quarantine expectations? And they're like, well, as long as they're clear with us, we want them to work, and we just keep going.
Wow.
The CDC guidelines, I would think, would be needed to follow no matter what is going on, no matter where they're working. I would think that any company that employs anyone would have to follow CDC guidelines at the least.
That's what I thought too, but every one of them have turned in, like my big one was HEB, and they went all the way up to HR with HEB, and they sent back their guidelines, and it, as long as the kid doesn't have fever and it wasn't a direct household exposure and all this kind of stuff, they're still working.
Well, that would still be, that would still fall under CDC, but probably TEA's got that extra level of exposure, and that TEA makes the statement that if a student does not get tested, then they're assumed to be positive, and I think that that's why they are getting quarantined for 14 days. So I can see a little bit of a difference in there, Ms. Irvin.
Yeah, that makes a difference, Mark. The difference between CDC and TEA requirements.
Right. Are you running into that same issue, Ms. Darby?
I am not. I just thought that was an interesting comment, so I just wanted to weigh in on it. How y'all doing today?
Great. Mr. McClure was asking me about a question earlier today, or just a few minutes ago, kind of informally before we got on. And there's a lot of students that are coming back and they're putting them into classes. How many of you are having trouble with students just now entering the school district, and then they're putting them in CTE classes 2 weeks before the end of the first semester? Mr. McClure, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, like you said, I reached out earlier just to inquire about that, and we always want to try to have the doors open, so to speak, and help kids. But in the same breath, we've also got to meet that attendance accounting handbook 90% rule. And if those students, don't meet that 90% rule, they can't get credit. And if they can't get credit, they can't be in a CTE course. They can't just be in it to audit it. According to the attendance accounting handbook. So the best practice, kind of what we've been trying to do is, move them in January and, let them get at least half credit for, a course that they want to sign up for. They're typically a principal's course, but, it's just a sticky situation, because in a lot of those cases, you've already covered all your your safety, your beginning of the year processes and procedures, and then you've got a kid that just slides in, which it's always like that every year, but this year it just seems like there's more because of the pandemic.
And we also talked about that if you're in a principal's classes, you're probably going to need to be a lot more lenient than a practicum or one of your senior level, because there's just nowhere. Those freshmen only have so many spots in their schedule, and sometimes they need those principal's classes to get into. So be as flexible as you can without compromising the integrity of the program. Mr. McClure, it's good to have you back from your illnesses.
You might want to clarify that so somebody doesn't think I've got something really bad. I'm kidding.
The free clinic does not post those results. Okay, okay, Miss Wood in the chat box, she posted a question that had to do with, let me pull it up and read it here. It says, has anyone done a culinary menu that meets the minimal food and nutrition guidelines that can be sold to students? And they're looking to possibly sell to students because the bistro looking to do that since they can't open the bistro to students, but do not want to harm the free and reduced lunch students. Ms. Wood, would you like to clarify there, or does that kind of catch it?
No, so we have opened our bistro to the public in the past. And so we've always had people coming in so they can practice restaurant skills and other things. And we've done a few staff lunches, but a 30-minute window for staff is kind of what we have. And so that's just not enough for our students. We're kind of a weird situation. We don't have a campus. We have 3 high schools that feed us. So our kids are not on our campus for lunch. So we were trying to do like breakfast burritos. And we don't have a cafeteria here at our campus at all. And so we're working with our regional service center and our food service provider to do the minimal nutrition and run it through their system. But I don't know if anybody's already done that and has met that, and if they've got some ideas of where to start, because we're going to try to start with breakfast burritos and then hopefully see if we can get those guidelines in the flour tortilla and egg whites versus regular eggs, or how that even works. But if somebody's already done that, I would love to see what they did.
And it sounds like that your food and nutrition person, your child nutrition person, she's in the loop, or he's in the loop. Is that correct?
Our cafeteria providers are already in the loop. They're just not used to it because our stuff is fresh food and their stuff is usually processed food. And so the system's different.
If Allison Benson is on here, I know that Birdville sounds like they're in a similar situation because Miss Wood, you do not have a cafeteria on campus, right?
No.
And I think they were in a similar situation. And so if Allison's on here, she might can speak up. If not, Lisa, when you worked at Birdville, do you remember how they did that?
The students were all scheduled lunches on their home campuses.
That's how we are.
But because of travel time back and forth, there was time between, and not every class at our tech center started at the same time. They were all offset. Sometimes they were, you're coming for a 1-period class. Sometimes you're coming for 2 for half day if it was cosmetology. And so there were kids available to go to that. It didn't compete with the cafeteria because the students still all had their scheduled lunches. It was kind of like them going to a vending machine or something along that lines. And so they were open before school for breakfast and open for multiple hours through lunch.
That's what we'd like to do, but we were told if our food didn't meet the nutritional guidelines that we could lose funding for free and reduced lunch, even though we don't have a cafeteria and we're not competing because they have scheduled lunch times at their home campus. But we were told that we are not allowed to jeopardize that unless it meets. Did y'all do that?
I don't want to speak for Allison since she's not on here today. You might want to reach out to her. I can put her email in the chat for you.
In Crowley, we do the same thing as Lisa, and we've cleared that with our food vendor, Aramark, that we're not in competition and we're able to do so. But students have lunch on their home campuses and we can still serve throughout the day.
What
And
district are you in?
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm in Crowley.
Okay.
Crowley ISD.
And Ms. Wood, you're talking about your culinary class serving to students, correct?
Yes, we are.
Now, the kitchen still had to be visited by the health department and that stuff, but it wasn't considered, it was kind of like running the school store. As long as it wasn't in competition with the running your cafeteria, I'm not aware of that being a struggle.
Okay.
Does anyone else in the group sell to students from the culinary program?
We
Has
do.
it? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We do, but we do it after school. So they just have like a called the Big Blue Cafe, and they sell after school 2 days a week, but nothing like what she's talking about for lunch or anything.
Right.
This is Erica Crump from Garland. Our GRCTC does sell to our students, but we do not have any child nutrition on our campus at all. We're kind of a satellite campus for all 7 high schools. But what we do to honor our free and reduced lunch students is that when they get off the bus or when they drive in, they walk across the street to Naaman Forest and they can get their free and reduced breakfast or lunch there. And they're only here for like 2 periods. And then, they leave to go to their home campus for lunch. So we don't ever have child nutrition. We're not in competition with them, but it's worked very well. So our kids can do that.
And I don't see Denton ISD on here, but Carla Ruby, you could be sure because they run it out of their food trucks. And so they built the food trucks through their auto department, and then their culinary mans and runs their food trucks.
And here in Little Elm, we have both a food truck and a bistro that typically on any given non-COVID year would be open to the public. But the food truck's been parked all year and the bistro has been closed to the public as well.
Terrific. Ms. Wood, does that get you some starting information?
That does. It gives me a little ammo in some school districts to say, is that really a rule or is that just something that we've decided to make a rule?
Well, I know that if you're on a campus that has a cafeteria, that's a no.
We don't, and our students actually have access to free and reduced lunch at their home campus because we're just like Lisa in Birdville. Our students are here 45 minutes up to 3 hours. They're scheduled throughout the day. They kind of come and go. So that does help me a lot. Thank you very much.
Any other topics? We've gone through another grading cycle. Are we still continuing to have trouble of student grades and attendance? And has anyone found any innovative solutions since we met last month?
Hey, Mark.
Yes, Ms.
I had a
Carter.
question before we move on from the culinary topic, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I had a question. Does anyone on here in your districts use any recording equipment in your culinary kitchens? One of our teachers would like to set up cameras to do demos for the students who are doing virtual learning since they can't physically be at school to participate in some of the hands-on things. And so I just wanted to maybe throw that out. And you don't have to share it in a group. You just will send me a chat or send me an email. I'd love to hear some of your ideas about how that's working out.
Ms. Darby, that would probably apply to a lot of different laptop situations. And I think what you're asking is, do you have a camera set up to record the lab? And in this particular case, it happens to be a culinary kitchen. So does anyone have a special camera setup that they're using to record labs or culinary kitchens for remote learners?
We've used, in some cases, webcams, in other cases, camcorders set up through a HDMI converter so that all of our teachers have pro Zoom accounts, and you can set up 2 cameras through that so that you've got one camera focusing on the demo itself and another camera focusing straight on their face so that the teacher can be demonstrating something and then look up straight into the camera and respond to students as well.
If Jason Hudson or Monica Paul, if one of them are in here, I know that they're using some type of camera system in virtually every CTE class. Jason, are you and Monica? There's Jason right there.
Hey,
Bottom right-hand square, rectangle.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jason Hudson from Wiley State. Yes, we elected to put cameras in all of our CT labs. It's been obviously much the same experience as everybody else. Anything that's technical right now, it has been delayed, but we are still putting cameras in all of our CT classrooms so that we could have our students remote in as good as possible, so they can see the activities that the teachers are conducting. But I've got your email in the chat box, and we'll reach out to you. Okay.
Hey, thank y'all so much.
Hey, Jason, what specific? Are you just using a regular camera? I saw someone in the chat box is using swivels.
Yeah, it's a swivel, and it's got a mic on it too, and a zoom.
That swivel seems to be the hot.
It makes the difference.
Yeah. Excellent.
Mark, it's Erica from Garland. I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
The CTAD courses going away, are they using BCIM 1 and 2, the regular courses for your special ed kids? And also we were looking at using the general employability skills and also the student to industry connections, which actually is a better fit for our work-based kids. So what is everybody else doing for that for our SPED students? We want to truly support them as well, very equitably.
And Ms. Crump, it's been several years since we've had a dedicated number for the CTED. If you've had it in the past 3 or 4 years, then you've probably been using the regular CTE service ID code anyway. So you might want to look back over the past couple of years and see what you've used historically. And you want to be one of our specialists from the service center may be able to jump in and do a better job answering this than I can, but you want to be careful when you're using the language and make sure that the students are in the least restrictive environment. So
that's what we're going for. We definitely want the least restrictive environment, but for career prep, we want to be sure that they are getting the skills and the workforce skills. So the student to industry connections, has anybody thought about using that? What are y'all's plans?
Hey, Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Jeff, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing? So we use general employability skills over at the 8th grade level, and I just wanted to remind that that's an innovative course, and that has to be approved by your local school board prior to you offering that course out. So it's something you have to go through your local board to get it approved before you do that. But it is a really good course. Our kids really like it, and it's working out well for our 8th graders.
That's actually what has spurred this question, because we're working on our list of courses that we need to take to the board in January for next year. And we're just trying to follow the pathways and really give the best, like you said, least restrictive experience for our kids. And we want them to be able to, truly be industry prepared.
So in Crowley, we started using general employability last year with FA, and then we've just had student to industry approved this year, and that's worked really, really well. We did a lot of PD with our SPED teachers, and it's been a beautiful fit.
Well, that's what we were like, student to industry connections, and we were reading the description, and we were talking to our SPED department, and we were like, this could really better prepare, and we were very excited. So you've had good success with it. So, well, we're going to move forward with requesting that then. Thank you very much.
Hey, Erica, did you say y'all were y'all are using the career preparation course in your SPED department?
In middle school. I mean,
okay.
Yes, and we want the student to industry certifications, the innovative course, and we were like, the way we were reading it, the description and stuff, we were very excited because it would give them those skills that everybody needs, you know, so we want to offer it to everybody.
Okay.
Miss Morgan, I don't think Miss Crump is referring to career prep like work-based learning. I think like the old college and career readiness. You don't have the kids working in jobs, Miss Crump, right?
Not in eighth grade.
Right.
Okay.
If you haven't looked at that new Student to Industry Connections course, it's a 1-credit course, and so it fits in a lot of things, and it can be taught by the SPED teacher, but it does, like Jeff mentioned, it does require, it's innovative, so it requires school board approval, and it does require the teacher to go through work-based learning training. And so I've had, I bet, a dozen reach outs to me this week alone, asking again about that work-based learning online course that was put out by TEA. It was taken down, I think, in April of 20, and they have hired a third-party company to build that new online course. It has not opened and released yet. Last I heard, it would be open before next summer, so that your teachers will be able to go through that. But even if it's a SPED teacher, because it's considered part of the work-based learning courses, you've got to put them through professional development. Now you can do that in-house, and a lot of districts choose to do their own in-house work-based learning professional development. That course, it kind of exists. The information for the old course is posted, but it doesn't have the quizzes, and it won't provide a certificate at the end of it. But they put it back up for people to be able to get to, because there were so many people wanting the information to build their own in-house training. And so it's all the same. It's one training, whether the teacher's teaching, a multiple credit work-based learning, or they're teaching the 1-credit work-based training. Some of that will probably not really apply to your SPED teacher teaching the 1 credit, because they're not going to be going to work sites and tracking hours and doing all of that. But a lot of it will be information that they'll still need.
And Lisa, I know that a lot of the service centers offer that in the summer and maybe right in the beginning of the fall, but that's also something, if you're in a bind, CTAT could help you out too with like if you're in that funky in-between time, we could help you out with a course on that too.
Yeah. And generally, the service centers offer it in the summer, because if you're in one of those work-based learning courses, you have to be in it for the entire year. And the documents that are required for that have to be within the first 15 days of school. So it's not generally a training that's offered multiple times through the year. It's usually offered over the summer and in August.
And I know that the general employability skills could be taught by a special ed certified teacher. And Jeff, you and Lisa are saying that that new course, the industry, what's the name of it again?
Student to industry, or student industry is something with that. It's new. We just adopted it too. I'm so glad, Lisa, you mentioned the work-based learning training, because I had not hadn't clicked with me yet. So I'll be putting that plan in place.
Ashley, is that a M127? It's a career tech funded course.
That's correct. It's classified right there with general employability skills.
Awesome.
The number is N1270154, Student to Industry Connections, 1 credit.
And I believe it's recommended grades 11 and 12.
Yes.
It's meant to kind of be that follow-up course to the general employability skills.
Right. We were very excited.
You guys that are fairly new to it, the N means it's an innovative course, and of course the 127 means that comes from Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 127, which is for career development.
Yeah, and I think what is new with that, and that's why I was asking Erica if she was using the career preparation, because I don't know if it's finalized. I think it's supposed to be this month if it hasn't already been, but that whole career development section, the chapter 127, I think SPED was added to that as a allowable certification area. So it can still be a CTE course that's taught by SPED certified teachers that don't have CTE certifications.
Ms. Morgan, I will follow up on that and make double sure.
Yeah.
I have not heard that, but I do know that several things have gone through the state board in the past couple of months that, and we could have just missed that. So I'll double check that.
Right, right. It would be the SBEC meeting notes. It's just buried in the, you have to really read into it to see that change, but it's the same one it's the same document where the CTE and the Tech Apps courses and everything were changed. But yes, that would be good. Double check me, because I'm not the state leader in SPED certifications.
And I'll double check that, because if that's true, then that would have been the August 1st, what was enacted August 1st.
I will say this new course was discussed at both this month's transition statewide meeting and at the SPED statewide meeting. So that may be why lots of people are starting to hear about it, because it was brought up to them, and they may start reaching out to their CTE departments to talk to me about it.
I know they're good courses, whether you're using them for SPED or not. So I know Jeff and them said they were using it for junior high and 8th grade courses, and I think that's an outstanding use of that course, and I'd recommend it to anyone. That's Mr. Dawson's asking on there, is anyone using general employability skills with 7th graders or just 8th graders? And somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but Mr. Dawson, I don't think it matters whether you use it in 7th or 8th grade, but you only use it once because you only have one service ID number. And in theory, I guess you could use this new course as the follow-up that Ashley said they were implementing.
It does count for high school credit, so you just have to think about when you're offering it and what your district rules are on for grading. If you are pushing it down very far and your kids aren't ready to handle high school GPA courses, and those high school credit middle school courses count in their high school GPA, you can have some kids get in trouble with their GPA before they even enter high school. So a lot of people were choosing 8th grade for that, doing like college and career exploration for 7th graders, and then general employability skills in 8th grade.
I had trouble with my GPA exiting high school. It wasn't entering it. It was fine when I went in it. It was on the way out, so I got in trouble. Okay, does anyone else have a hot topic? We're sitting here at about an hour at 55 minutes, so we don't want to rush anyone, but also, Robin, do we have any legislation that you think you want to get some input from, or are we good there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I ran their bill alert list just before we started today. There's a couple of major bills that have been filed, and just want to make you aware of those in case you have some time. And I encourage you to make some time to reach out to your lawmakers, your state representative, and your state senator. So one of our bills was recently filed, and it is Senate Bill 194, SB 194, and that's related to the indicators of achievement under the public school accountability domain, and it would add completion of programs of study as an accountability indicator. So that's one that came out recently. There are a couple related to counseling, SB 178 and SB 179. SB 178 would increase the counselor or lower the counselor to student ratio by 500 students per year through 2027. Just sort of a stair step per year. The corresponding bill, SB 179, would require that at least 80% of a counselor's time be spent on counseling duties. And I know we've seen these bills before. What's interesting is that we haven't seen a companion one before, which is a tiered approach to addressing the counselor to student ratio. There's an interesting one filed. It's very ambitious, and we love it. It is House Bill 334 by Representative Gates. And he wants to take us back to the 90% of funds allocated for CTE must be used in providing CTE. Very ambitious this session, but the good news is that as long as that language is filed as a bill, whether or not it gets a hearing or passes, it is recent history. It is not ancient history, so it's easier to address that in future sessions. So that is a good bill. Let's see. This one is interesting. Okay, so House Bill 434 by Keith Bell. This one would allow flexibility to satisfy graduation requirements with either fine arts or CTE. And the reason why this is interesting is because it would provide a new level of flexibility. CTE has never been required for graduation. It has never been required as a graduation credit. So this would be pretty groundbreaking if we were able to get a hearing on this one. So those are the majors. Unless you've heard about anything else you have questions on. My list, I already have about 13 or 14 we're following. So we'll get that, we'll keep following those and provide bill alerts and updates as we go forward.
That's pretty exciting legislation overall, I'd say. Does anyone have comment, input? Now's a great time to do it.
Robin, on the first one that you discussed about program of study completers being included in that student accountability, matrix, I know that we're up maybe in 2021 or 2022 for an accountability reset where they were going to kind of rewrite the rules or whatever, and I kind of had anticipated that may, be in that, but I think that may all be backed up due to COVID because obviously the state of Texas doesn't want to, the scores that are probably fixing to come out if we do take, standardized tests this year probably won't be too great. They're going to show some regression, obviously. Is there anything that we should do proactively to voice our support of that? Is that a TEA thing? Is that a accountability department thing? Is that what are the steps? Because I think that's crucial for us to get ourselves back in school accountability in something else besides just IBC attainment.
Well, to address your question, Mark, I think you've seen the agency's position under the current commissioner is to require exclusively IBC when it comes to CTE because they eliminated the completion of coherent sequences in the accountability system. So I think driving this from the CTE community perspective is absolutely critical to make change at the agency. So having this done in advance of 2022 would be a good step. Additionally, you guys might find this interesting. Let me see if I can find the bill number real quick. Anyway, regardless, it's pretty interesting. It says that any new accountability rule approved by the commissioner shall have a 2-year waiting period before it's effective. Seriously, a bill has been filed that says that.
Well, gosh, that means it'd be 4 years because all of that data is 2 years old anyway, or a lot of it is.
Exactly. And the good news is if we get that in legislation, it's a lot easier to negotiate with the agency when they're writing rule changes because state statute trumps the agency's policies.
So you're saying contact legislators about that bill and voice our support for it. What was the number of it again?
Okay, that one is.
I think it was the very first one you talked about.
It's Senate Bill 194. Senator Powell filed the bill, but the first step is to have this bill get a hearing in the Senate. So I would focus on your state senator and request that this bill be granted a hearing. It's still early. Session hasn't started yet, so the best thing to do is just plant the seed. Call the office, introduce yourself, say who you're with, that you manage CTE. You're very interested in this bill that was filed by Senator Powell. Explain the impact that it would have for your district, and request their support of granting a hearing for this bill. And it's SB 194 by Senator Powell.
Thank you.
Hey, Robin, while we got people on here, just real quick, could you share the process, like when Marty gets, like when Marty starts lobbying for a piece of legislation, how does that happen, as opposed to just us calling a state senator or representative?
Well, as you can imagine, having access to these people takes really strong relationships and years to build them. And so this bill in particular is a carryover from last session, when the wording was completion of coherent sequences, which we all know programs of study were coming in to replace them. So last year's bill failed, and it was filed by Senator Powell. So the groundwork had been laid with her office to go ahead and broach this with new language. And she was extremely receptive and willing to file that again. And so that's just one example of, you know, a long-term relationship and very collaborative work to bring this legislation to fruition again, or at least bring another draft bill forward. But backing up from that, our board of directors at CTAT actually reviews our CTE legislative and policy agenda and provides their input and approval. The board's actually scheduled to meet next week, and that is one of the top items on the agenda, is to review everything that we have set out so far to support, to advocate for, to advocate against. And obviously, as session rolls along, there are new things that come up, so we have to visit about those. But at least at the outset, we get, you know, we listen, especially through these roundtables and outreach and area meetings. We listen to what's going on. And then when ideas come up, we run them by people, you know, with the board having the final approval of what we're going to support. So.
And so if someone wanted to make a comment, then they could contact you, or they could contact their board member, you know, because some of this legislation, you know, I remember I'd see it and I'd say, well, I wonder if that's good or bad to us. And I know I would always reach out to you, and you would say, don't support that one, you know. And so, you know, you can reach out to a board member, or reach out to Robin, and, you know, to kind of get more details, to kind of get the history of it, I think is very beneficial for a lot of everyone.
Well, it is. The other thing too is it provides us, you know, I know it's not easy for everybody to come to Austin and talk to their lawmaker in person. This year, I don't know that I will be able to talk to them in person, but it helps provide additional background. You know, everybody's voice has something different to contribute. And all of that combined makes for a better, just better voices, you know, more robust background in order to advocate for or against a particular position. And if you don't mind, Mark, what I was thinking is at the beginning of the next several roundtables, the session is going, if you don't mind, if we could dedicate some time to a legislative update, that would be, I would appreciate that. I don't know if folks here would. Let us know.
That would be great. Yeah. I see that turning into this as we get closer to the session starting, probably be half and half, you know, legislative updates. Anyone else have a hot topic? Not trying to run anyone off, but we are at 3:36. And so if you have a topic, now's the time to get it in. And we're getting a lot of chatter in the chat box, people wanting legislative updates, so that's good. Okay, well then I'm going to close down the recording, and thank you to everyone for being here. I think there's some great information get shared. Sometimes these meetings start and I think, well, nothing's going to happen, and then it ends up 5 or 6 hot topics come up and we get some great information. So thank you so much. Robin, thanks for those legislative updates. I know that was always one of my favorite things to hear, were the legislative updates, and so I know everyone benefits from those. So I'm going to hit the record button. Thank you for being here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can figure out how to not record.